There are moments that freeze time, not because they're beautiful, but because they sting so deeply that the heart almost forgets how to beat. She was just living her life, being herself, when a cruel comment tried to define her. One click, one label, one heartless video that told the world she was the ugliest woman alive. But it wasn't just a video. It was a weapon. One that tried to pierce through her identity, her dignity, her worth. And yet, when the world expected her to break, she smiled. They typed faster than they thought. Those comments drenched in cruelty, hidden behind anonymous screens. Words that were meant to cut, to silence, to shame. But where others saw a reason to retreat, she saw a reason to rise. When the hate poured in, she didn't throw hate back. She threw light. She threw light. She didn't reply with vengeance. She replied with vision. She understood something the world often forgets. Hurt people hurt people, but healed people heal. And she had made a quiet vow in the dark nights of her own healing that she would be a vessel for compassion even when none was shown to her. There were days her tears watered the ground beneath her dreams. But through the broken soil, something stronger grew. A love that could not be insulted. A heart that refused to harden. A spirit that chose softness as its sword. Every harsh comment became a training ground. Every insult became an invitation to stand taller. Her smile, her poise, her unbreakable joy, it was a declaration that she would never bow to bitterness. She had found the strength to stay kind in an unkind world, and that made her powerful beyond measure. She did not argue for her worth. She embodied it. She did not shout back at the cruelty. She outshined it. And the beautiful irony was this. The more hate she received, the more love she gave, not to win their approval, but to prove their hate would never win. She knew this deep truth. Compassion is the loudest voice in the room, even when it whispers, and hers echoed far beyond the reach of their screens. She made her smile a shield, not a mask. She never faked a smile to survive. She built one from truth to thrive. Yankos. That smile wasn't a disguise to hide the pain. It was a statement that the pain had no power left. Behind that gentle curve of courage was 1,000 mornings of choosing joy, 1,000 nights of laying down shame. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. But it was real. Oh. She smiled not because life was perfect, but because she had stopped waiting for perfection to be present. Her smile was her choice, a refusal to let others narrate her story. When they mocked, she smiled. When they stared, she smiled. Not to play strong, but because she had found strength that couldn't be taken. She realized that happiness wasn't something the world handed you. It was something you decide to hand yourself. That smile, it wasn't silent. It screamed, I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still worthy. I still matter. It became her power and her protest. A protest against cruelty. A protest against limitation. A protest against every stereotype that tried to erase her beauty and brilliance. She turned her expression into a force field, and people who came to judge ended up being moved. And she ended up being moved. People who came to mock ended up being changed. Her smile wasn't her armor. It was her anthem. She answered every doubt with dignity. They doubted she could speak with power, so she did. They doubted she could lead, so she led. So she led. They doubted she could love herself in a world that called her unlovable, so she loved louder than ever. Every time someone said you can't, she didn't try to convince them. She just went ahead and did it. She stopped trying to fit into expectations that were never designed for her light. Instead, she redefined what light looked like. When doubt was cast like a shadow over her potential, she refused to shrink. She realized something revolutionary. She didn't need to argue for her possibilities. She only needed to live them. That choice shifted everything. That choice shifted everything. She no longer treated doubt as her enemy, but as her training partner. The more they questioned her, the clearer her answer became. Not in speeches, but in steps forward. And with every step, she modeled something life-altering. Your limitations don't have to be your truth. The world may try to define your ceiling, but you still get to decide your sky. She walked in dignity, not because everyone believed in her, but because she finally believed in herself. And when dignity became her foundation, nothing could shake her worth again. She proved that beauty begins with belief. They told her she was ugly, that her face wasn't a normal, that no one would ever want to be her. But here's what they didn't know. She had stopped seeing beauty as something that had to be validated. She saw it as something sacred, something internal, something no mirror or magazine could define. Her belief in her own beauty became her revolution. She didn't chase trends, she cherished truth. She didn't alter herself to fit into the world's box. To fit into the world's box, she shattered the box entirely. Her eyes lit up not from approval, but from authenticity. She wasn't beautiful because she approved them wrong. She was beautiful because she finally saw herself right. She looked in the mirror and spoke to the girl they tried to erase, and she said, "You are here. You are whole. You are holy. You are holy." The power of that belief spilled into every room she walked into. People didn't just see her. They saw themselves. They saw the courage to redefine identity, to reclaim worth, to rewrite beauty. She made others feel seen, not because she wanted attention, but because she knew what it felt like to be invisible. And by standing in her own worth, she invited others to stand in theirs. Her beauty wasn't loud. It was luminous. It wasn't luminous. It wasn't polished. It was powerful. It didn't beg to be liked. It declared itself enough. And the moment she believed in her beauty, the world had no choice but to see it too. She became the hope she once needed. What began as survival turned into something sacred. Her story, once laced with rejection, became a refuge for the rejected. Her voice, once buried by shame, became a bridge for others to find their own. She became what she never had growing up, a living mirror of possibility. And that's the most beautiful thing of all. She didn't just overcome. She overflowed with hope, with honesty, with healing. With healing. She used her scars not to scare people, but to show them that survival is sacred. Her pain had purpose. Her wounds carried wisdom. Her difference was divine. She didn't wait for someone else to light the way. She lit it herself. And now, every step she takes lights it for others. You see, her story isn't just about her. It's about all of us. About what happens when you choose love over hate. When you choose truth over lies. When you choose compassion over cruelty. When you choose belief over brokenness. Her smile, it defeated more than hate. It defeated hopelessness. And now it shines as a lighthouse for every soul who's ever felt less than, left out, or looked down on. There was a time when the mirror didn't reflect beauty. Not because it wasn't there, but because the world had convinced her that it wasn't. Every scar, every difference, every feature that didn't conform was held against her like a sentence. But the beautiful irony of life is this. What they use to mock you is often the very thing heaven marked you with to reveal your greatness. She didn't beg for acceptance. She didn't apologize for her face. She didn't explain her frame. She stood there, exactly as she was, and decided not to wear shame like a veil, but to wear her differences like a crown. The same crown the world tried to rip from her head is the one that glistens today under the light of courage, compassion, and truth. Because it wasn't her body that was broken. It was the world's definition of beauty. And she rewrote it. Not with anger, not with vengeance, but with love, with bravery, and with the quiet power of a woman who refused to shrink. It takes a different kind of strength to not just live in a world that judges what it doesn't understand, but to thrive in it. She could have hidden. She could have hidden. She could have curled up in silence, but she knew the truth. If you let others define you, give them the keys to your soul. And she wasn't giving hers away. Instead, she turned what most people would see as weakness into an invitation for humanity to remember its heart. Her face wasn't a flaw. It was a flame. It lit rooms not with perfection, but with presence. It reminded people to look again, not just with their eyes, but with their souls. And when they looked again, they saw not a girl to be pitied, but a warrior crowned by grace. Her difference wasn't just visible. It was undeniable, and that became her power. Because when you stand boldly in what sets you apart, you give others permission to do the same. She didn't wait to be invited to the table. She built one, and not just for herself, but for every person who ever felt like they didn't belong. Every person who's been told they're too much, too little, too different, too anything. Her message was clear. You don't need fixing. You need embracing. And if the world won't do it, I will start by embracing myself first. So she smiled. Not to cover pain, but to disarm it. Not to pretend, but to proclaim. That smile, wide and radiant, became her rebellion. Against the bullies. Against the boxes. Against every standard that screamed she wasn't enough. That smile was louder than the hate. Louder than the hate. Louder than the internet. Louder than fear. And with it, she reminded the world that power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just stands tall, quietly declaring, I'm still here, still standing, still beautiful. Her story didn't need validation. It needed to be voiced. And once it was, something incredible happened. People began to see themselves in her. Not because they shared her condition, but because they shared her fight. The battle to love themselves in a world that constantly profits off their insecurity. And suddenly, her crown wasn't just hers. It became a symbol for all who've been othered. A silent anthem that whispered, a different isn't a defect. It's divine. She didn't wear makeup to mask who she was. She wore hope like armor. And she didn't chase likes. She chased purpose. Because deep down, she understood that changing the world doesn't begin with being perfect. It begins with being real. And she was real in a way that made people stop scrolling. Not because of how she looked, but because of how she made them feel. Seen, heard, valued. Seen, heard, valued. There is something unstoppable about someone who has been through hell and came back wearing heaven like a crown. That's her. She faced rejection and chose to respond with reflection. Not on what was wrong with her, but on what was wrong with a world that couldn't recognize greatness unless it was wrapped in convention. And in that reflection, she found her mission, not to fight hate with hate, but to break it open with love. Her crown wasn't gold. It was made of every kind word she chose, every day she didn't give up, every time she told her truth, even when her voice trembled. Today, that crown rests not just on her head, but on every person who chooses to rise in their authenticity. She paved the way with grace, and not the quiet kind, the fierce kind. The kind that walks into rooms and makes space for others to breathe easier. The kind that turns pain into purpose. The kind that understands beauty not as symmetry, but as soul. So if you ever doubt yourself, if you ever feel too different to belong, remember her. Remember the girl they tried to bury in mockery who bloomed in strength. Remember the smile that conquered cyberbullying. Remember the voice that rose from rejection and built an empire of empathy. Remember that she didn't change to fit. She dared to stand out, and in doing so, she changed everything, and here's what's even more powerful. What she did is not exclusive to her. It's available to all of us. We can all choose to wear our differences like a crown, to stop apologizing for how we show up in the world, to stop shrinking for the comfort of others. To walk with heads high, not because we're perfect, but because we're powerfully imperfect and fully worthy. She taught us that love begins where comparison ends. That bravery often looks like vulnerability. That worth is not given. It's recognized. It's recognized. And that when you stop chasing the world's applause and start listening to your heart's whisper, you'll hear the truth. You were never too much. You were just too bright for people still living in dim spaces. So where your differences, let them shine. Let them sweat. Let them stand tall. Let them stand tall. Let them heal not only you, but the world around you. Like she did. Like you can. Like you were always meant to, Dot. There was a time when she wondered if her voice mattered, if the sound of her truth could rise above the noise of the world's cruelty. But then something shifted. Not because life was perfect, but because she proved that joy is still a choice. And she chose it. Every single time, she could have chosen rage. She could have fought back with insults of her own. She could have matched hate for hate. But instead, she chose something far stronger. She chose compassion. She chose compassion. She let her heart lead, not because she didn't feel the sting, but because she knew that matching bitterness only spreads more of it. Instead, she broke the cycle. She saw the comments not as reflections of her, but as reflections of the brokenness in others. She realized that hurt people often try to hurt others, and rather than letting that darkness change her, she became a lighthouse in it. A beacon that said, you don't have to understand me to treat me with dignity, but if you won't, I'll still choose love anyway. And that choice, that radical act of kindness in the face of cruelty, shocked the world more than her appearance ever could. Because it reminded everyone that true beauty isn't in the mirror. It's in the choices we make when we're hurt. She didn't become like those who attacked her. She rose above them. Her heart refused to shrink just to make room for other people's smallness. She was proof that when you let compassion speak louder than comments, your life becomes a testimony, not just a reaction. That her smile wasn't an accident. It was a decision. A daily moment-by-moment choice to cling to joy even when sorrow was easier. She knew what it was like to cry into her pillow, to feel alone in a crowded world, to wonder if her life would ever be more than pain. But still, she smiled, not to hide her hurt, but to show her hope. Because joy, real joy, isn't found in having a perfect life. It's found in living fully despite the imperfections. Every time she smiled, it was an act of rebellion against a world that said she didn't belong. It was a declaration. You don't get to steal my joy. Her smile had power. Smile had power. It softened hearts, opened minds, and disarmed cruelty. And it showed all of us that maybe, just maybe, the most beautiful people aren't the ones with flawless skin or perfect lives, but the ones who smile with truth in their eyes and victory in their soul. She didn't fake happiness. She forged it. And in doing so, she invited us all to do the same, that they tried to silence her with shame. But instead, she picked up a microphone. She found her voice. And once she did, she never gave it back. Her voice didn't just tell her story. It told the stories of everyone who'd ever been bullied, belittled, or broken. Her words carried weight because they were born from wounds. They weren't rehearsed. They were real. She didn't speak to be famous. She spoke to be heard. And in doing so, she gave voice to the voiceless. Every speech, every interview, every sentence she spoke was a seed planted in someone else's heart. Someone who needed to know they weren't alone. And slowly, the very platform that was used to humiliate her became her pulpit of power. The internet that tried to destroy her became the vehicle for her purpose. And the hate that tried to bury her only rooted her deeper in her calling. She taught us that your voice is your weapon, but not to wound others, to awaken them. To remind them that no matter what the world says, you are worthy, you are enough, and your story matters. For so long, society has tried to teach us that differences should be hidden, fixed, or apologized for. But she flipped the script. She stopped trying to blend in. She stopped apologizing for the space she took up in the world. Instead, she embraced her uniqueness as a kind of royalty, not arrogance ownership. She turned what others mocked into something sacred. She knew that every scar, every struggle, every step she took was proof of survival, not shame. Her very presence said, I'm not here to be your definition of beautiful. I'm here to be mine. And when people saw her standing tall, shoulders back, eyes bright, smile wide, it challenged their understanding of strength. She didn't walk in with perfection. She walked in with power.